talk about it today. So again, 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. We're getting close to the end of that series, but I think it's been really fruitful, as for me personally, because these are laws of, in fact, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more of these. If you can imagine, we've gone through almost, well, we've been 20 today.
Wow.
Of these different laws. So the law today is the law of the picture. Okay, so it's the law of the picture. And what the law of the picture says is people do what people see.
Hmm.
People do what people see. Okay. And John says the greatest motivation that you'll ever have for other people is for them to visually see in you what you want to be the behavior. Okay. So, Jill and I talked about this over the weekend of this idea of modeling the way, right?
Mhm.
And we're always asking ourselves the question, especially with our kids, is, this is what we want in our kids, but are we doing that? I mean, literally, like, is that something they see in us? So if they want us to we want them to be kind. The question is, are we kind? Are we modeling kindness to them? And so as a leader, that's the biggest challenge you face in the model of the way, is literally walking this thing out day after day in the way that you want people to behave ultimately, right? And he says, as a boss, I tell you what to do, but as a leader, I show you what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the distinction. Again, there's bleed over there, but ultimately you're wanting to do those things and model those things out. So in the culture, I always have to ask myself the question, am I innovating? If I'm asking my guys to do that, am I doing it? Ultimately, if I'm wanting them to, say, I want you to treat everybody like you matter to them, I'm saying, am I modeling you matter to me?
Yeah.
To them, and so, it's a gut check and a mirror and a reflection to literally take this law of the picture. And the reason why it's the picture is because you're trying to paint a picture for what it is you want to happen. And in order to do that, you have to be the one living that out.
Yeah.
Not perfectly, but permanently, as my coach used to say so much. So what are your comments about this idea of people do what people see? Stuff is caught more than it's taught, as they say, especially in parenting, right?
Yeah,
Thoughts?
I think that's like the essence of parenting right there. Like there's because even out the gate, the you're setting an example to your kids before they can even talk, so you can't even tell them what to do. So I think out the gate, it's they're watching you and your every move. But yeah, I like that this kind of aligns with the model the way. I think that's the leadership challenge, kind of the examples given in there are like so solid on like the guy picking up trash and I think to or to and the correct, like, say, I think it was correcting picking up trash and correcting like safety issues or whatnot, and everybody just kind of like jumped on board just because he started doing it. I think that's like, yeah, way more powerful than telling and trying to enforce it that way.
Yeah, it's good.
I agree. I think there is like a monkey see, monkey do element too. It's like at the end of the day, how are you leading by example, but also how is that being received? So if we're following up and following through on things the right way, our teams will then see it and then start to maybe shift some things that they're doing, or even ask for guidance on, hey, I notice you do this really well. How can I be like you? And I think that's always like that's an honor for someone to ask, how can I be like you? Like, how do I handle things the way you do? How do I, pursue conversations with clients or whatever that is. So
yeah, that's
I think
good.
it does matter.
Yeah, he says here, I really love this, and it's something I'm going to write down myself, but he says, how we view things is how we do things. It's a really catchy statement, but how we view things is how we do things, right? Painting that picture of how we see it is how we're going to do it at the end of the day. Kate said to me over the weekend, we were all around the table, we always have, time for, just sort of being candid but gracious, right? Where you can say, where do we need to improve as parents, Says, well, when I remember when Levi was walking for the first time, and she said, you kind of didn't include me as much in that as you should have. And I remember that, and I was like, I said, you know what, you're right. I didn't do a good job of including you as much as I should have in that, for sure. So kids are watching, all these little things, that I'm like, oh my gosh. So, it's just, but it's good to ask for feedback. And because you don't recognize, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. So just being aware that people are watching you all the time. And so, we just have to be real cognizant of those things as we do, and always be willing to reflect. He says to find out what others see, ask questions, right? Like it's incumbent upon us as leaders to ask people questions. What do you see? What am I missing? What is there anything else you think we should be doing differently? That should be part of your repertoire of just, Jill and I do that every Friday, every Saturday night. I'm like, how are we doing? What would you make different, in our relationship, and so just asking questions, pulling that out of people. By the way, that it can't happen once. It has to be consistent. You have to keep asking over and over and over again. Why do you think that's the case?
It's like our vision and mission. For it to land, you have to keep repeating it. So you have to follow the behavior multiple times for it to just become natural. And
I want you to think about this. Trust takes time. And consistency. Okay. So people need to hear you over and over again go, I want to hear feedback from you. I want to hear feedback from you. Because they're not going to believe you the first time. They'll still I don't know. So you just have to be willing to do things over and over again. Okay. He goes through these couple of things I think are important. To help others see more, you need to share what you see. So pulling people in and sharing what you see and how you see it, and pull them at the leadership table, like what we're doing now. Like, hey, this is what I'm seeing right now, and bring them into the table. Okay. And sharing those experiences with them. Okay. So bringing people along with you, bringing people in meetings with you, kind of like we're doing down on our meeting, like just pulling them in, pulling in Lana, pulling people in, just letting them sit at the table and observe. It's a great way to just model those things and then unpacking those. Okay. That's one way to do it. As a leader, you can either put someone in the seat in front of you. Okay. That's one way to do it, or in the seat beside you. So allow people to experience things with you as you go through it together. Okay. There's rarely a time I do something completely alone. There are times that I do some things that are necessary, but a lot of times I want to pull people into the experience with me, a lot more than I used to, because all of a sudden they get to learn something new, and I actually get to learn something new too through that, because then they'll say something and they'll go, actually, I saw this. At the board meeting on Sunday, I was like, a couple of people said something and went, wow, I didn't see that, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things. I literally have a notebook, and I was like, oh, I didn't see that. You know? And so I always unpack meetings. I'm like, oh, that was something new and good. And so it's always pulling other people in, because you get these new perspectives, and they get new perspectives. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see it that way, right? So just try to pull people in to the table with you as much as you can. And then the third one is just model insights for leaders. Followers are always watching what you do, and followers may doubt what you say, but they will believe what you do. Does that make sense? So they might doubt what you say, but they're always going to believe what you do. Okay, so the actions will always trump those things. Okay, so for example, again, I'm using a parenting example, but we always tell our kids, I say the same thing every night. I said, do you see my eyes? And they said, yes, I see your eyes. And I said, do you think God sees you? They said, yes, God sees me. I said, do you think he's ever going to leave you or forsake you? He says, no. And I said, do we love you unconditionally? Yes. And then I said, does God love you unconditionally? Yes. But what I always say to them, some nights they'll say to me, I'll say, do you think I love you unconditionally? Sometimes they'll say no. Okay. And what I always say to them, I said, how do you know that I love you unconditionally? And they always say, because of what you do, right? So it's the actions that will always trump the words when all is said and done, right? And so that's just really good for us to remember, and he even says culture is more important than vision. That fascinating. Culture is more important than vision. It's more important than strategy. So that's why this culture is so important, because it's a doing, and people are watching, and they're experiencing values being lived out. Notice on Fridays, what we do is shout outs, and people are saying what they're seeing. Does that make sense? I saw so-and-so do this. I saw this. This is this law. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So any thoughts as we close it out?
Yeah, I think it's a good call, but it also just helps us remind ourselves, like, kind of like, even when no one's watching, you should still be as consistent as you can as if someone is watching. Because you never know where you're going to be, or that one person just happens to be right there. So
you never know.
It's just